this weight. I got to move this weight so I can take baby on a date. It's gonna be great, great, great. Gotta move this weight on the new self-titled album, Little Hop Along, including other tracks like If You're Ever Down in Texas by my book, and The Only Snakes I Like Are on My Feet, as well as Crambone, the Gospel Trap remix, as well as She Gon' Get This Package, featuring Tariq from Alabama Elementary. Out here moving this weight, I got to move this weight so I can take baby on a date. It's gonna be great, great, great. Gotta move this weight on the new self-titled album, Little Hop Along, including other tracks like If You're Ever Down in Texas by my book, and The Only Snakes I Like Are on My Feet, as well as Crambone, the Gospel Trap remix, as well as She Gon' Get This Package, featuring Tariq from Alabama Elementary.
This author is a Midwest native who discovered the writing bug as an undergraduate at Truman State University. He has since become a published writer who has crafted prose across multiple genres, including biblical, family, relationship themes, and credits Sandra Brown, Harlan Coben, Neil Gaiman, and Walter Mosley as his favorite authors. He is an active member of the American Writers and Artists Institute. With this affiliation, he's a graduate of the Long Ridge Writers Group and is also affiliated with the St. Louis Writers Guild and many other groups. God's plan for his life is writing, and he aspires to join the New York bestsellers list with future plans to write stage and screenplays. He's a contributing author to The Blood and the People, making him a veteran from a black perspective. Please welcome Mr. Ken Compton. Ken, how you doing today?
Well, Robin, how are you?
Good. I'm so glad that we can finally hear you and that we have the opportunity to speak today. Just quickly, I had the opportunity to read both Graffiti Park, which is an amazing story, but it is quite different from the also dynamic piece, Geraldine, in the People. Just to quickly go over your first piece from this anthology, Graffiti Park, I interpreted that the detective Steve was white and he was also experiencing spiritual warfare and mental anguish that was triggered by hearing someone that raped a lady, Terry, who I believe was also white. But this was in an urban community. His own experiences seem to have been that he was abused as a child, and his unresolved anger was not helping him to function as a healthy person day to day in his role as a detective. Can you share the connection of his emotional trauma to the historical mural wall that is repeated over and over in Graffiti Park? And also, can you talk with us about the mysterious old lady?
All right. Well, thank you for the question. Steve actually has no necessarily not a connection to the mural wall, but he does have his own history with the Irish mystic whose name is Beatrice in Graffiti Park. He is connected with her. He has a history as a child, and then coming into his own as an adult, who is a great detective in this fictional universe. He encounters her again while trying to solve a crime, and it just so happens she witnesses the assault of this young lady. So it creates a little bit of a mystery as far as how it all ties in together.
Okay. So from what I've seen in our society, leading successful lives tends to be a theme of adults who have suffered trauma or lacked having what they need during their younger traumas. Can you share the background and some of the development tone that you have for Graffiti Park when creating it?
Well, with Steve, who is the protagonist of Graffiti Park, you know, as I mentioned, he has come into his own. He is one of the best detectives that's in this universe of characters that I have created. But what I want people to know is, even though you lead successful lives and things like that, and you know, we all have a bag of rocks to carry. And for those who are familiar with this story, you'll know that his big flaw is that he's harboring anger towards his towards his mother and father. And I want people to know that Graffiti Park it's a place not necessarily of danger. It just depends on what you bring with you. In this case, while Steve was trying to do his job, he brought in that anger into Graffiti Park, and he experiences a lot of these different things that you see throughout the story while in the park.
Now, moving over to a much more short and sweet story, but as impactful story as Graffiti Park, Geraldine from The People was actually a story of Barbara, who was an administrator at a hospice, and she was caring for Mr. Thomas, who seemed to be in his last days there at the facility. After not being able to make the visit to her own father, Barbara that is, due to him suddenly passing away 2 days after she had spoken with him on the phone, she felt deep regret. What is the purpose for Mr. Thomas being in her path at that time?
Closure is one thing that I've come to realize is a big thing with me. I found it just creeping up in my writing, Graffiti Park and story, Geraldine. And of course, the guilt that Barbara felt, she failed her father, not knowing that he was going to pass away. He just had one more wish, and that was seeing his daughter one more time. In the case of Mr. Thomas, she saw an opportunity to help someone where she had failed her father. She wanted to help someone in his last days on the earth. And in that, she was able to find some closure for herself.
Thank you so much for that insight. And Mr. Thomas's memory of Geraldine seemed to have been tied to his greatest years as a successful man, owning his own property and home. What is the message you intended to convey to the readers about both Barbara's services to Mr. Thomas and Mr. Thomas finally being able to communicate more clearly when he was on his way and while at home?
Well, everything happened so fast with him, as far as illnesses and things. And we all don't get an opportunity to, in our last days, to do the things that we kind of want to do. And with Barbara, in doing research for this story, I was actually some feedback that I was given from an actual nurse, and I mentioned this in the story, how it's uncommon for an administrator to take an interest in the residents. But of course, she took an interest in him. She was able to help him and in a way find a way to help herself, which was totally unexpected. It was just in the end a feeling that came over her, as she helped him do the big thing that he wanted to do. And also being an author, there's always a little bit of mystery, in every story that I write. So the whole idea of who Geraldine really is was kind of what I hope would keep readers turning the pages, even though it's a short piece. So.
Now, I don't know how far apart these two literary works, both Geraldine and Graffiti Park, were actually written, but I wanted to know, from your perspective and doing more so work in terms of using the theme closure, do you think that both of these stories were written at different times to where you dealt with closure differently for your own personal events that have occurred?
Actually, yes. Closure is something that, I have dealt with in my life, dealing with things that have happened in the past. And I'm hearing that from a couple of other authors too. And I didn't even know that closure was going to be a big thing for me. Yeah. But it just so happens that it has been. And even in the first story of the series that I'm going to write, closure, once again, is a huge thing for the antagonist of that story. So, I'm glad that I was able to be a part of this anthology to share a longer piece and a short piece, and to put in the idea of closure for both of them, in a longer and a shorter piece. So I am grateful for that.
Yeah, I'm totally grateful too. And just both of them having strong differences as far as conclusion is concerned, Kent. That's the reason why I asked about the things that you might have been going through when writing Graffiti Park, because it seems like it almost hit a cliffhanger. And then with Geraldine, it's like we had this divinity when it came to, closure and them both having hope toward the end. So Thank you so much for your time and contributing to both pieces. And you have a great evening.
Thank
Your outlets. Back to the show.
Welcome back to From a Black Perspective. Shouts out again to Robin and Monica. Monica, that was a very, very deep story. We're now here with Arthur Ken Compton. Ken Compton is a native of St. Louis, Missouri. He's also a graduate of Truman State University and a fellow chapter member in the mighty Muta chapter of Phi Beta Sigma alongside Arthur Eddie Pierce. In his childhood, he was inspired by authors R.L. Stein and Christopher Pike. He's been writing since 2007. He's also contributed to the series From a Black Perspective, The Blood, where he published an excerpt of Graffiti Part, a surreal crime drama series of the same name. Now, Ken, we can go ahead with your reading.
Thank you so much, JD, and thank you to Rainbow Room Publishing, all of our viewers, for spending time with us this afternoon. My reading is indeed Geraldine, taken from a Black Perspective, The People. Lights out was at 9:30 p.m., and 218 was the last room Barbara had to inspect. She peered inside where a moonlit window illuminated a frail man resting on an angled Tempur-Pedic in an otherwise dark, somber space. There was something familiar about him. His silver hair was unkempt. His eyes were partially opened. His brown skin was cluttered with moles, and breathing tubes nestled at the nostrils instead of the mouth left him free to speak. The man turned and met her interest. Her father had had the same sunken face. "I miss Geraldine," he said. "Come again, sir?" "I miss Geraldine." Barbara hesitated. The man looked away. "I'll send a care team member to assist you," she said before departing. Barbara Noble, administrator, had been newly inscribed on the doorplate of the large office at the end of the hall. The Safe Haven hospice logo greeted her from the computer screen once she was seated behind the cherry wood desk. Curiosity inspired a few keystrokes that brightened the monitor with a patient list. Melvin Henry Thomas resided in 218, age 81, stage 4 emphysema, one grandson in the Marines overseas, no other known relatives, no mind-fogging side effects from treatment, no one named Geraldine. Oh well. Barbara messaged a care attendant, and logged off. The burgundy executive chair cooled her back as she reclined. It was uncommon for administrators to take personal interest in residents, but Mr. Thomas's resemblance to her father disrupted objectivity. "I need to see you today, Barbs," he said some Tuesday morning not long ago. "Daddy, I can't. It's a 4-hour drive, and I just started a new job in a hospice. I'll come this weekend and bring you those Crown Candy chocolates." "I don't need chocolate. I need to see my only daughter as soon as possible." She laughed it off and replied, "I'll see you this weekend." 2 days later, he died of heart failure. The permeating stink of sickly bodies greeted her upon arriving at Safe Haven early the next day. A gulp of brew broke the stench as she walked towards the stairwell, avoiding the wait for the elevator. On the second floor, room 218 was to the left, where not much had changed from the night before. "Good morning, Mr. Thomas." She stepped inside and placed her coffee and purse on the bedside table. "Is there anything a staff member or I can do for you?" The familiar face greeted her. "I miss Geraldine." Who was Geraldine? And I'll end my reading there.
Thank you, Ken, for that amazing story. Based on experience from me, taking care of an elderly, my grandfather. So this kind of gives kind of an insight on what we have to deal with, especially with our elderly. The personality of the main character, which you've spoken of, seems to me that she's a professional caregiver, and it's so clear. But did you also draw any personal experience as a caregiver on this story?
I actually don't have any experience with caregiving myself, especially someone experiencing, facing death themselves. But this piece was inspired by my grandmother, who I speak of in the author's note. And she truly did miss Geraldine, as I mentioned. And people often ask, well, where do you get your ideas? They ask authors that all the time. And I used something that my grandmother used to say when she went through that, missing Geraldine, and I just turned it into a story.
Well, we appreciate that. And then let's take a question from our audience. When can we expect the first novel in the series Graffiti Park?
Well, what I can tell you is that Graffiti Park is indeed underway. I have started the writing of the novel. What I can also say is that I'm reusing characters that are in the short story, as well as introducing new characters as well. I don't have an exact timeline, but believe me, to those who were a fan of the short story, I appreciate all of your encouragement, and believe me, it is coming. So I won't disappoint you. I hope I don't.
Well, thank you for that. And we'll be looking forward to that Graffiti Park. And thank you, Ken, for your time. And we're going to go to another commercial break.
Thank you.
Available now from Screenwriter Inc. Becoming a Fearless Author by Crystal Renee Tillman with Dreamwriter Inc., the essential writer's guide for authors both new and published. Get your copies today.
Hello, my name is Keith Clark, founder and CEO of Beyond All Limits. Just coming you guys with a quick, very important event. Save the date, July 28th through the 30th. Again, July 28th, 30th, as Beyond All Limits hosts our second empowerment conference in Houston.